Only about half of the Thinkomancers physically looked at Parson as he entered the temple. Isaac, at least, got out of his recliner and stood up to greet him. He'd been warned not to speak in here. Maggie said to think at the group, like entering words into his iBook. So, he sub-vocalized, hearing the go out over some kind of telepathic channel in his mind. Maggie says this is the one place in the world where Charlie can't snoop? That's correct, Chief Warlord, answered Isaac. A vague facial impression of the caster, almost like a chat icon, formed in Parson's mind. And the sound of his thoughts actually reverberated in his head, like a cheap sound effect. Parson found that funny for some reason. The columns, roof, and floor make this space opaque to any form of thinkomancy we know of. Well, you guys know your business, Parson sent, as he proceeded around the temple perimeter toward the little half-flight of stairs. He figured he'd better start with the elephant in the room. But I was thinking, let's assume that's true, okay? This place is telepathically impregnable. If I'm a smart and tricky and rich and powerful carnimancer like Charlie, and there's one blind spot in the world where I can't use my magic eye of Sauron to see, I'm gonna put a really high strategic priority on finding out what's going on in there. Parson descended to the level of the couches and recliners, approaching Maggie and Isaac. Which means having somebody on the inside. One of you reporting in. Parson could hear something like clicking in his mind. Little cut-off syllables of words. A switchboard? Some of the Thinkomancers who'd been standing up went over to their furniture and sat. One, a woman in what looked like hair rollers, looked up at the ceiling and closed her eyes. Her mouth hung open. Parson walked up to Maggie, who held up a hand to him. He waited. Clarification request. Carnimancer? Sent Roger Victor Clarence. Parson's eyes went wide. The message he'd heard was a form of thinkomancy that he hadn't run into before. It was like multimedia thought. Weirder even, what he received wasn't entirely sensory. For one thing, he didn't actually hear the words clarification request. Instead, there was something like an emotional inflection to it. The feel of curiosity was on the single word of the transmission. For another, he had never been introduced to Roger by name, but that name and identification was clearly a part of the message. It came into his head as factual knowledge, conveyed without actual teaching. That seemed like a useful trick. Parson smiled, glancing around the enormous room. Yeah, I just found that out. That's news to you all too, then? More switchboard thoughts. Isaac raised an eyebrow. If true, it settles a long debate. Parson tilted his head. And if there's a spy in here, Charlie's going to know we know. And he'll know how we know. If there's a spy in here, Roger thought, the message dripping with the emotional taste of disdain and anger, they may want to reconsider working for a Titan's disbanded carny.